Hi everyone. In today's video, I'm going to talk about constellations for each night. Um, this is a tier list of the power jump that you'll be getting from each constellation. So specifically, which level should you level up each night's constellation to? It's not a tier list purely for how good a night is, so don't get confused by that. This is purely talking about the biggest power jump for each level of the constellation. So as a good example here, once again I have Deathmask and also Mermaid Thetis. If you look at my tier list, you would know Deathmask is actually one of the tier 0 characters, whereas Mermaid Thetis is more of okay-ish character. However, the reason I put Mermaid Thetis over Deathmask here is because Mermaid Thetis actually, in my opinion, get a pretty good buff from her constellation. Whereas Deathmask constellation, whilst it's good, it's not essential. And that's why, in my opinion, Mermaid Thetis, you really need all 9 destiny point for constellation to unlock the second level to truly make her playable. Whereas for Deathmask, you can actually play him without any constellation at all. So yeah, so that's how you should be interpreting this tier list. So without further ado, let's go straight into it. So yeah, so let's talk about the two characters up on the screen. Mermaid Thetis. Mermaid Thetis is good with her constellation because now whenever her linked ally get attacked, she is immediately able to release the Binding Coral. Now, Coral is to the enemy who deals the most damage. So that makes it really nice in the sense that before it was a looping skill, so you are not actually sure how much or how often you are able to inflict it onto your opponent. However, now that with both levels of constellation upgraded, she's able to inflict it straight away whenever her linked ally gets damaged. So this is actually a really good way of ensuring your skill get released. And because this is inflicted to the enemy who deal the most damage, it's actually pretty good ability or effect to have to delay or it's essentially stiff and also delay how much that enemy normally the most of the time the main damage dealer in the opponent's team is able to inflict on you. So that's why in my opinion you really need all 9 destiny points for Mermaid Thetis. Now for Deathmask is not quite essential because for Deathmask when you have all of her his constellation leveled up, what it does is it resets the cooldown for all of your skills and also buff up your Cosmo to the max. However, most of the time you would have Desma already with level 30 close unlocked, in which case if any enemy is killed off, you will be absorbing their Cosmo already. So the incremental gain from 9 Destiny Point for Constellation is not that much because yes, whilst you are recovering his Cosmo all the way to the max, his clothes will normally get you halfway there already. So it's not that big an incremental deal. So that's why I put Desma as kind of useful enough at even without any constellation. Next, we have Athena. Athena to me needs to be at least the first level constellation so that she's able to dispel the buffs, the debuff and control effects. Normally, to be honest, I wouldn't recommend playing Athena because normally you have Moses who do a much better job, and Moses is at 9 destiny point. I'll just say that now. Um, yeah, so normally I wouldn't play Athena in the first place, but if you have to, you kind of do want to make sure at least you have the first level constellation, so she almost become like a weaker version of Moses. Now for Moses, you definitely need the full constellation in order to grant this kind of debuff to all of the opponent knights. So that's absolutely essential. Like it's a massive power jump for Moses. That's why you absolutely need it at 9 out of 9. Next, we have Sea Dragon Kanon. Now, Sea Dragon Kanon, I actually almost made a whole level for certain characters, such as Sea Dragon Kanon, which is that you can build him in two different ways. You can either build him really budgety with absolutely no investment, or you can go all the way out with 9 Destiny points. Now, the reason here for Sea Dragon Kanon is with no investment at all, you can put Sea Dragon Kanon in just to make sure that you confuse the targeted enemy at the start of battle, and that's most of the time what people are going to use Sea Dragon Cannon for. So that's why it can be built budgetly with no investment. However, if you do have the resources and pump it all the way up to 9 destiny points, it's a pretty significant buff here because now he is able to not just confuse enemy at the start of battle, but he's able to do this every 10 seconds. So that's actually a really good increase. So that's why Sea Dragon Cannon is here. Next, we have Krishna. Krishna to me is 3 out of 9. It's really useful to have his Kundalini to be released multiple times in battle. Now, at 9 destiny points, basically what happens is you can release that slightly more frequently. Well, not more frequently, but with less intervals. But the problem is you are kind of maxed out at most, I believe, 4 times in every combat anyway. So I don't think that slightly reduction in the cooldown interval really matters here. Kasa to me is either built budgetly just for his ability to prevent one of your knight being killed off, or you have to go all out and make sure that his formation get the most out of his electricity. So the enemy wouldn't be able to get any buff when he's paralyzed. So yeah, either way, budget or all out. Gemini Saga, definitely 9 out of 9. Gemini Saga, basically, you need him to warm up in order to get his full effect. And with his constellation, you get a lot more room for error because now, basically, whenever his HP drop below both 60% and also 30%, he is going to hide away. And also his effect of essentially increasing his buff the longer he stays in the battle doubles as well during the time he's disappeared. So it's super useful. You definitely need him at 9 out of 9. Shaka, locked behind VIP, so I doubt many people would even have him at high enough level to have constellation, so 0 out of 9. Um, Gemini Kanon to me, you need 9 out of 9 to be honest. You can't even build him budgetly, which is why you need 9 out of 9. He gets a pretty significant bump once again when he has his full constellation unlock, where he's able to now basically confuse everyone at the start of the battle because uh, any enemy who attacks him will be confused, and you normally want to put him in the front row. So therefore, you pretty much confuse everyone at the start of the battle. So that's really useful. Evil Sega, either 3 out of 9 or 9 out of 9. I'll probably say 3 out of 9. Evil Sega, you want 3 out of 9 just so that he is able to share the damage he would take to someone else, to the person who is being controlled by him. So that's really good in order to improve your survivability and also make sure you are actually able to kill off a knight, an enemy knight quite soon. So 3 out of 9 for me for Evil Sega as a minimum. But to be honest, if you have to resource, I would almost want to say 9 out of 9 as well. Um, Mirror is either all out or nothing. So basically, the reason for this is Mirror, you definitely want level 30 of his clothes so that he's able to do massive amount of damage to the boss. However, if you only use him for boss battle, you don't really need to invest in his constellation. His constellation is mainly for outside the bosses because it's mainly for when you kill off an enemy and want to then target the next enemy. When you're up against the boss battle, you only have a single target, so it doesn't really matter. So Mirror is really depending on whether you actually want to use him in any game mode outside of boss. Uh, Aphrodite to me is 9 out of 9, I'll say. You don't see him played much because he essentially basically he's only really useful when you have lots of characters who is able to inflict poison damage. Um, so his constellation basically guarantees the enemy get poisoned when he gets attacked, and that's really useful. Um, actually, I don't know. It's because he only his constellation only grants buff to himself, i.e., only the enemy who attacks him will get poisoned. Maybe it's I'll probably actually say 0 out of 9. Actually, I'll change my mind. I think he it's a good buff to his constellation, but this increase in constellation still wouldn't see him played any more frequently than now. So purely because there's just lack of good knights who are able to have good synergy with him with poison effect. So yes, I changed my mind. He is 0 out of 9 for me. Next we have Libra Shiryu. Libra Shiryu for me, you definitely want at least 3 out of 9, possibly even 9 out of 9 if you have the resources. Basically similar to Gemini Sega, if you have Libra Shuru with his constellation, it significantly reduce the time he needs to warm up and really get into his powerful state. So definitely at least 3 out of 9, possibly 9 out of 9. Uh, Leo Horus, I would probably say 3 out of 9. It's not essential, but if you do have resources, I would do recommend 3 out of 9 if possible. Basically, this allows him to get a shield. Normally, a lot of time you may want to put Leo Horus, Aurora up front, almost as a semi-tank. The problem with that is you can play him up front because when he releases ultimate, he's able to leech and recover health, which is why you can play him up front. But sometimes he is just too fragile enough to even last him long enough to release his ultimate. So having this ability to grant himself a shield does improve his survivability up front a lot more. So that's why I would suggest 3 out of 9. Uh, Aris Mu Aerosmith's best situation, though, I'll probably say either 0 or 9. It's not because of certain game modes, but it's more like Mirror. You do want to play Aerosmith in kind of PvP or maps mainly. The same with Aerosmith is his constellation get activated when his HP is below 30%. Um, and then he basically put up his crystal wall, which can heal and also grant a shield to all of your allies. But it's very situational depending on whether your HP would happen to drop below 30% when all of your allies are also losing their health, or actually your Arismu is actually going to be one of the last ones standing. So by the time he actually dropped below 30% health, most of your allies has already been killed off. Now, because it's quite situational, I would probably say it's either 0 or 9, depending on who you actually really putting him alongside with, and whether he would actually be able to activate his constellation effect in time to actually protect your allies. Sagittarius, I would probably say 3 out of 9 if resources permit, 9 out of 9, but otherwise minimum 3 out of 9. You get a lot of Cosmo for the first few seconds as a result. This guarantees your Sagittarius Seiya is able to release his ultimate first, and that's why it's really important to have him at least one level of constellation up. If you do have both, it helps because then he also get an attacking buff, and that really helps him to ensure he can actually wipe out the enemy and close off the battle as soon as possible. But if your Sagittarius is strong enough, he doesn't really need that attacking buff anyway. So 3 out of 9 as a bare minimum, but if resources permit, 9 out of 9 as well. Um, Sagittarius Aiolos, pretty weak constellation. It's probably one of the worst constellation skill I've seen. Definitely no worse investment. Across Camus, either 0 or 9. Basically, you are now able to freeze the enemy for half a second every time with your normal attack. Half a second is not that much, which is why I'll probably say 0 most of the time. However, if you watch my video guide on Gemini Kanon, you actually realize those two have a really good synergy because Gemini Kanon is able to inflict a layer of starfall every time when the enemy is controlled. And the Crest Camus normal attack on the constellation is the perfect synergy for that. So that's why it's situational, depending on whether you plan to use him alongside with Gemini Cannon. That will decide whether you go for 0 or 9 destiny point here. Next we have Libra Dohko. Libra Dohko, you have to 9 out of 9, in my opinion. The problem with Libra Dohko is a lot of time he's really solid, but he turns out to be the last one standing in your team. And he just doesn't do enough damage, unlike, let's say, Libra Shiryu, who's actually able to wipe out the team when is one of the last one standing. Libra Dohko is not able to do that by himself. However, his constellation, when fully powered up, not only increase his max HP, so make him even able to tank much more, but also deals extra damage every single time, equal to 2% of his max HP. So absolutely massive. You really need 9 out of 9 to make Libra Dohko even any sense. Otherwise, he's just going to be the last one standing and not actually protect your team. Um, Taurus out the I'll probably say 0 out of 9. It's a good ability, but it's just not really essential to be honest. It's not really worth the investment, I would say. Next we have Captain Shura, once again 0 out of 9. It's a nice ability. You're able to leech and get some of your health back, but he has a built-in leech anyway with his normal skill kit. So I don't really think, once again, I don't think it's worth the return on investment here. Vergoshum, I don't know. I almost want to say 0 out of 9 as well. Maybe 9 out of 9. It's it's really hard for Vergoshun. Basically, Vergoshun is his ability at 3 out of 9 is absolutely rubbish. So you either go 0 or 9. I'll probably say here. Yeah, I'll put him in this layer. Most of the time, I'll probably say 0 if you are short on resources. But it's a pretty nice buff where you have him completely leveled up on Constellation, especially once again with you may think only increasing the buff and debuff slightly by an extra 5%, so maybe not too much, but normally you pair up Ferguson with Sagittarius Seiya and try to really wipe out the team as soon as possible in the battle. And that 5% can actually be the deciding factor between whether you're able to wipe out the enemy completely or whether you give the enemy a chance to fight back. So I can definitely see the argument for 9 out of 9, to be honest, but you can also play him with no investment in the constellation front. His close is absolutely essential, so definitely up his close to max, but constellation is really debatable. Uh, Marine, Marine is actually a pretty good constellation, but I just hardly see Marine being played at all, and it's very probability driven, which is why I'll probably put Marine at 0 out of 9. Um, Agathe 0 out of 9. He's a tank. His constellation is actually trying to reduce the enemy's defense, but because he is a tank, that's not really his main purpose. And also, it's one random enemy. I just really don't like this random probability kind of thing. So, to me, 0 out of 9. Sheena probably 9 with 0, depending on whether you plan to use her in boss battle. If you are not planning to use her in boss battle, then I don't think you need any constellation. However, if you do use her in boss battle, 9 the star points pretty big deal because then now she get guaranteed crit on the electricity when the boss is on electricity. That's a massive increase in terms of the damage dealt. So either 0 or 9, depending on the game mode. Dante, no one places. I'll just put it here. Uh, Babel, you probably want 3 out of 9. Babel is quite interesting. So once again, you don't normally see him played much, but I do actually think he can be pretty deadly when he has his armor completely level up and also at least minimum 3 destiny point to unlock his first level constellation. Basically, at the first level, he can recharge Cosmo when the enemy is under burning. So this almost lets him charge up Cosmo as fast as Sagittarius, and you know how deadly that can be. So I don't think you can underestimate how much power jump he gets from the first level constellation. That's why I put him here. Misty, not essential. Good to have, but not essential. I'll put 0 out of 9. Jamian, once again, it can be really good if you. I, I don't know. You hardly play him. I'll probably put 0 out of 9 as well. I can definitely see the argument to go all the 9 destiny point, but I once again I don't think it's worth the return investment. So probably 0 out of 9 here. Next we have Deal. Deal is actually quite interesting. I'm gonna put Deal as 0 out of 9. I don't think you will ever play Deal, but the power jump um, from the first level constellation is actually quite significant. basically Dio gets so much stronger when he has higher HP than the opponent. But that's normally quite hard to ensure. However, with his first level constellation, whenever an enemy is killed off, he regains HP by 50%, and that almost makes him go into this hunting zone straight away. So that makes him really good and almost have this a bit of like snowball effect. I don't think you will ever play him, but that is a significant power jump, which I would like to point out here. Ptolemy 0 out of 9. Like it's not even like Sheena and Miro get a pretty big jump from the constellation that makes them useful in certain game. For example, you have second level constellation, so Miro can be played outside the boss, and you have 9 destiny points, so Sheena can be played in boss battle. Ptolemy's I don't think Ptolemy's constellation is good enough to let you play him outside the boss battle. You can attack you can attack two enemy with your normal attack, but I don't think that's significant buff enough to really grant playing him anymore often than needed. I'll go 0 out of 9. You get a stronger show, but not really essential. Serious, I'll probably say either 9 or 0, depending on whether you build him budget. It's similar to kind of Sea Dragon Kanon. If you want to go for a kamikaze build, you can play him with 0 destiny points, just to make sure his shield get broken as quickly as possible to stun the enemy. However, if you do have resources, you can also build him the high expensive way, which actually allows him to grant a lot more shield to your allies and protect your allies that way. So it can go either way, 0 or 9, depending on how you build it. Hound Asterion, 0 out of 9 for me. Useful skill, but to be honest, no worth the return investment. Cabela useless character in general, so 0 out of 9 here. Um, yeah, so here's my thoughts on the tier list for Constellation. There's a reason why there's so many knights you see here in the 0 out of 9 section. That's because Constellation is actually really expensive. It's not like close when you have the blood of God, etc., which is expensive, but at least you can guarantee it. The same with constellation is that there's a really high chance of randomness in terms of which character's destiny point you get, and because that it can actually be super expensive to build someone out, and that's why even though there's actually quite a few characters here that potentially is okay in terms of their constellation skill, I decided to put them under this tier just to save up the resources here and really shine out on who absolutely needs to have their constellation to be leveled up in order to bring out their full potential.